They also prepare guisos. These are stews where you take a member of the family and you put them in a pig boiler and you pour gasoline on them and then you set a match to them.
Have you ever wondered what truly lies beneath the surface of Mexico's vibrant culture? What happens when the allure of wealth and power spirals into a world of unimaginable violence? In today's deep dive, we uncover the chilling methods of torture used by Mexican cartels, methods so brutal they seem almost unimaginable. Why do these cartels resort to such horrific practices? What drives them to instill fear in the very communities they inhabit? Join us as we explore these unsettling questions and unveil the grim realities that persist in the shadows. Stay with us till the end to discover not just the violence, but also the stories of resilience that emerge in the wake of such terror. Beneath the vibrant colors of Mexico's landscapes and the rich culture lies a darker reality, one riddled with fear, violence, and brutality. The Mexican cartels, notorious for their power and influence, have gained infamy not only for their drug trafficking operations, but also for the horrifying methods they employ to instill terror in their enemies and maintain control over their territories. Number 6. Beheadings, the grim signature. One of the most shocking methods employed by Mexican cartels is beheading, a brutal practice that has become a grim signature of their violence. This method serves a dual purpose: to eliminate enemies and to instill fear in the public. Cartel members often film these executions, broadcasting the acts on social media and messaging apps to demonstrate their power and ruthlessness. These graphic videos are intended to intimidate rival gangs, informants, and anyone else who might consider crossing the cartel. Beheadings are not merely acts of murder. They are ritualistic displays of dominance. The gruesome nature of this method sends a clear message: betrayal will be met with the utmost severity. The cartels often choose high-profile targets, showcasing their capacity to reach anyone, regardless of status or position. Victims are frequently selected based on their affiliations, with the execution carried out in a public or semi-public setting to maximize visibility. This calculated brutality is designed to create a climate of fear that dissuades dissent and reinforces the cartel's grip on power. The psychological impact of these acts is profound. Families of victims live in constant fear of retaliation, while the general public is left traumatized by the specter of violence. In many communities, the beheadings become part of the local narrative, a dark reminder of the consequences of living in areas controlled by cartels. Over time, these brutal acts contribute to a cycle of violence that perpetuates the cartel's control, making it increasingly difficult for authorities to regain a foothold in affected regions. Number 5. Dismemberment, a method of control. Dismemberment is another horrifying torture method utilized by Mexican cartels, representing an extreme level of brutality that further emphasizes their capacity for violence. This method involves the systematic severing of limbs and other body parts, often carried out while the victim is still alive. Dismemberment is not only physically excruciating, but also psychologically tormenting for the victim, who experiences a prolonged and agonizing death. This method serves several purposes for the cartels. Firstly, it acts as a warning to rival gangs, signaling the lengths to which the cartel will go to maintain its dominance. Secondly, it serves as a form of psychological warfare against potential informants or those considering betraying the cartel. The act of dismemberment is not just about the physical act itself. It is a demonstration of power, a way to show that the cartel can control not only life and death but also the very bodies of its victims. Victims of dismemberment often include those who are seen as a threat to the cartel's operations, rival gang members, informants, or even individuals within the cartel itself. The act is typically carried out in secluded locations, where the cartel members can operate without drawing attention. Once the dismemberment is complete, body parts are often disposed of in public places or left as gruesome messages for others to find. The psychological toll of such acts extends beyond the immediate victims, affecting entire communities that live under the constant threat of violence. Number 4. Torture with household tools. The dreadful utility of everyday objects. The use of everyday household tools as instruments of torture is perhaps one of the most disturbing practices associated with cartel violence. Items such as drills, hammers, and knives are often employed in unimaginable ways to inflict pain and suffering on victims. This method underscores the brutal reality of cartel violence. Victims are not only subjected to physical torture, but also stripped of their dignity and humanity. Cartel members may use drills to create painful injuries, puncturing skin and muscle while the victim is still alive. Hammers are often utilized to crush bones or inflict blunt force trauma, causing excruciating pain. The intent is not only to extract information, but to prolong suffering, making the torture a sadistic display of power. This method reflects the cartel's belief that fear is a powerful tool for control, and the more brutal the act, the more effective the message. The use of household tools also indicates a chilling level of detachment from the act of violence. By employing everyday items, cartel members blur the lines between the ordinary and the horrific, creating a sense of normalcy around extreme violence. This tactic is designed to desensitize both the perpetrators and the witnesses, making it easier for the cartels to continue their reign of terror without remorse. The psychological implications for those who witness or participate in these acts can be devastating, leading to a cycle of violence that perpetuates the cartel's control over their territories. Number 3. Forced disappearances. A silent horror. Forced disappearances are a particularly insidious method used by Mexican cartels to instill fear and control over communities. Victims are abducted and taken to undisclosed locations, often never to be seen again. This practice not only eliminates potential threats to the cartel but also creates a pervasive atmosphere of fear and uncertainty among the populace. Families of the disappeared are left in a state of anguish, with no answers or closure, perpetuating a cycle of despair that further entrenches the cartel's power. The mechanics of forced disappearances can be brutal and systematic. Victims may be targeted based on their affiliations, perceived threats, or simply as a means of asserting dominance in a particular area. Once abducted, they are taken to clandestine locations where torture may occur, or they may simply vanish without a trace. The cartels often use this method as a way to communicate their power, sending a clear message to others that dissent will not be tolerated. The social ramifications of forced disappearances are profound. Families are left to mourn without knowing what happened to their loved ones, creating a climate of fear that paralyzes communities. This uncertainty prevents individuals from speaking out against the cartels, as the fear of being targeted for similar treatment looms large. In regions plagued by cartel violence, the practice of forced disappearances becomes part of the fabric of everyday life, altering the dynamics of community relationships and interactions. Number 2. Psychological torture. The mind as a battlefield. In addition to physical violence, Mexican cartels often employ psychological torture as a means of control and intimidation. This form of torture can take many shapes, including threats to family members, coercion, and manipulation. The intent is to instill fear not only in the victim, but also in their loved ones, creating a chilling environment where loyalty is dictated by fear rather than trust. Victims may be subjected to scenarios designed to break their spirit, such as being forced to witness the torture or execution of others. This psychological torment can have lasting effects, leaving deep emotional scars that linger long after the physical violence has ceased. The use of psychological torture reflects the cartel's understanding of fear as a powerful weapon. By eroding the victim's mental resilience, they create a sense of helplessness that facilitates control. Additionally, cartels may leverage technology to amplify their psychological torture tactics. The use of social media to broadcast threats, share graphic images, or send direct messages to victims' families creates an environment of constant surveillance and fear. The knowledge that one's family could be targeted at any moment leads to a pervasive sense of dread that permeates everyday life. This tactic not only serves to control individuals, but also acts as a warning to others, showcasing the lengths to which the cartels will go to maintain their dominance. Number 1. Impunity and corruption. The environment of fear. The environment in which cartels operate is often characterized by a complete lack of accountability. Corruption among law enforcement and government officials allows these organizations to operate with impunity, perpetuating their violent practices without fear of reprisal. This systemic corruption creates an environment where brutality becomes normalized, making it increasingly difficult for communities to seek justice or protection. In many cases, law enforcement officials are either complicit in cartel activities or too afraid to act against them. This culture of fear not only emboldens the cartels but also further traumatizes communities that live under their control. The inability to turn to authorities for help reinforces the cycle of violence, leaving individuals vulnerable to the whims of powerful criminal organizations. The consequences of this environment extend beyond the immediate victims of cartel violence. Families live in constant fear, communities are torn apart, and social fabric deteriorates under the weight of violence and impunity. This climate of fear is a deliberate tactic employed by the cartels to maintain their control, ensuring that dissent is quelled and that they can operate without interference. The brutal methods employed by Mexican cartels reveal a dark and terrifying reality that extends far beyond the confines of organized crime. From beheadings to psychological torture, these acts are not merely violent outbursts, they are calculated strategies designed to instill fear, exert control, and eliminate threats. The impact of this violence reverberates throughout communities, leaving behind a trail of trauma and despair that affects generations. As we uncover these horrific practices, it is essential to remember the human cost behind the headlines. Each victim represents a life cut short or irrevocably altered by the grip of cartel violence. The resilience of communities in the face of such brutality is often overshadowed by the terror that pervades their daily lives. For many, the hope for a peaceful existence is shattered by the relentless presence of fear and violence. Understanding these methods and their implications is crucial in raising awareness about the ongoing struggles faced by individuals in cartel-controlled regions. Moreover, the narratives surrounding these cartels often fail to capture the complexity of the issues at hand. Many individuals caught in this cycle of violence are not merely victims or perpetrators. They are products of an environment marked by poverty, corruption, and a lack of opportunities. Addressing the root causes of cartel violence requires a multifaceted approach, including economic development, community support, and robust law enforcement efforts aimed at dismantling the power structures that enable such brutality. Understanding the extent of cartel violence requires examining the broader societal context in which these organizations operate. In many regions of Mexico, economic instability, lack of education, and limited job opportunities create an environment ripe for cartel recruitment. Young people, often desperate for a way to escape poverty, may find themselves drawn into the world of organized crime, where the allure of quick money and power can be hard to resist. This cycle perpetuates not only the violence inflicted by the cartels, but also a sense of hopelessness among those living in affected communities. Addressing these root causes is essential to breaking the cycle of violence and providing alternatives for at-risk individuals. Remember, raising awareness is the first step toward change. Share this video to inform others about the harsh realities faced by individuals living under the shadow of cartel violence. Together, we can foster a dialogue that seeks understanding, empathy, and ultimately, a path toward justice. Until next time, stay informed and engaged.